So Bob Potter here again, this time to talk a little about this Mercedes E-Class diesel that I bought a couple of years ago. This is the car that ultimately replaced that big, beautiful Audi, which I had done a video about earlier, and which I had traded in on the wheelchair van and thought I could get by with that and be happy with that, and just use it as a utility vehicle and forget about having a fun car. I didn't need that anymore. I'd done that enough in my lifetime. And that lasted about 6 months, and I was bored to death with that van, so I wanted something a little more interesting, and this is what I wound up with. Now, this is a 2016 E-Class Mercedes diesel, and you may wonder, why in the devil do I want a diesel? Smelly, slow, balky, ugly, blah, blah, blah. Well, not anymore. And unfortunately, this 2016 is the last year that Mercedes exported diesels to the United States because of, I think, all the pollution requirements and maybe the fact that they weren't selling very well. I don't know why. Anyway, I got hooked on Mercedes diesels initially with the 1980 300 SD, the W116 body. That was when they were really making the diesels to last forever and ever. Those cars were totally designed and built by the engineers. They had the final say-so on everything that went into those cars way back then. Not the marketing people, not the sales people, not the finance people. It was the engineers, and those cars were really built to last. However, they don't last forever in Minnesota winter with salt and snow and stuff like that, so eventually that car had to go. This is the W212 E-Class designation. As it turns out, I have found in research that I've also had the W210 and the W211. And the difference is, as you might expect, changes in the appearance, the interior, the features, and all that sort of stuff. This is really, I think it's a great car. As far as I'm concerned, they've really done a wonderful job with the diesel. They've made it fast and very economical. But, of course, they had to put on all this pollution control stuff, which makes the whole thing's reliability and longevity a little bit suspect in my mind. I've heard some people say that you don't really expect to get much more than 100,000 miles out of these Blue Tech diesels, and I've heard others say, well, if you maintain them properly, they'll go 300,000. Who knows? I'll never get 300,000 miles on it. I won't live that long. I might not even make 100,000 with it. It's got 65,000 on it now. I bought it with about 55,000. I only put about 5,000 miles a year on it. I mean, when you're as old as I am, you don't drive a hell of a lot. Anyway, I'll just show you a few of the cool things about this. And by the way, yeah, it's a little dirty. We've had some dew overnight, and it's not perfectly clean. But if I waited for the perfect moment when everything was perfectly clean and everything, why, this would never get done. Oh, great! Here comes a plane. We are in the landing pattern or the takeoff pattern for St. Pete Clearwater International Airport, I guess. Anyway, if you've got the key in your pocket, you can just put your foot under the trunk there, and bing, it pops right open. And it's not a bad sized trunk. I mean, I'm not sure you'd get four sets of golf clubs in there, but at my age, I don't play golf anyway. I don't need that. The previous owner specified this nifty little gizmo here that pulls out, and you push it down like that, and you've got room to store stuff that doesn't bounce around and get banged up. I think particularly that I would put my booze bottles in there, so that coming home from the liquor store, if I had to come to a sudden stop, I wouldn't have to worry about my booze bottles breaking. That would be a real tragedy. Can you imagine how the trunk would smell, and can you imagine how ugly it would be to see an old man sitting in the trunk trying to slurp up all that stuff? Really bad news. And then to close the thing, you just push this little button right here. That's all there is to it. I suppose if your dog is misbehaving, you could probably stick it in there. If it's a small dog or a cat, stick it in there and get it out of the back seat. Trunk, like I said, pretty good size. You have these little handles here. If you open them, it'll push the back seats down to give you even more storage space. Although it's hard to imagine that somebody driving one of these cars is going to go to Home Depot and bring home loads of drywall, but yeah, whatever. Maybe you find a body out on the road, you stuff it in there until you can get it to the coroner's office or something. And you'll notice you got these little hook anchors here, and that's good for tying stuff down. If you've got unruly grandchildren, stick them back here. That'll teach them to not to behave themselves. Tie them down and wait till let their parents take care of them. Now under here is where you would normally have the spare tire, but in this case you've got the diesel exhaust fluid tank, I guess you would call it. And basically what that is, it's a formulation of some kind of urea that they mix in with the exhaust, and it gets rid of some kind of a nasty pollutant. I'm not sure what it is. Basically that diesel exhaust fluid is nothing more than rather sharply diluted cat pee, although you'd never want to use real pee in it. You buy it from Advanced Auto Parts or somewhere and dump it in when they get a little indication on the dashboard that tells you that you're running out. Otherwise, just let it run its course. And then to close the trunk, you just close this little button right here, and down it goes. It flashes a couple times when it's locking too. So the back seat. What can we say about the back seat? Well, you know, not that big. It's not a limousine by any means, but you got room for your grandkids back there, a dog or two if they're well behaved, and probably half a dozen or so illegal aliens if you're transporting them for some reason. Now this W212 model has a number of advanced electronic features, at least advanced back in 2016, things like lane keeping reminder and adaptive cruise control, the parking monitors front and rear, all that kind of stuff that a guy doesn't really need, but it's kind of nice to have, and you get used to it, and you know it's pretty handy. I'm going to demonstrate this little diesel engine for you, because that is what makes this car unique. Oh yeah, it's gonna squawk at me because I don't have the damn seatbelt latched. Well, okay, so there we are. Now let's go and take a look at that little motor. Quiet little thing. I mean, this is a little 4-cylinder that's about the size of a sewing machine when you look at it. We've got the hood partly latched there, unlatched. Okay, so there it is, that little tiny 2.1 liter sewing machine diesel engine. But for that size, I think it's about 140 cubic inches or so. It puts out 195 horsepower and something like 349 or 50 foot-pounds of torque. And good fuel mileage. I mean, good Lord, it's rated, I think on the highway it's rated at about 42 by EPA. And I have got as much as, I've gotten pretty darn close to 50 on a few occasions. Okay, going downhill with the wind at my back, I suppose. I don't know. Anyway, don't really care that much about it, except that it is nice to drive and very pleasant on the highway. That's it. Don't need to go on at much more length about all this. Is this going to be Bob's last car? Well, one would say logically, yeah, it should be, given what a great vehicle it is, how well I like it, and how damned old I am. But is it really going to be my last car? I don't think I'd take that side of that trade. I think that would not necessarily be a good bet. Anyway, there it is, the 2016 Mercedes E-Class W212 Blue Tech Diesel. Great car, love it. If you can find one at a reasonable price, don't be afraid of buying it, or fun to drive. That's the important part.